So welcome everybody. We're back here. We're week 4 in the semester, but it's only week 3 in MISA. So it's always kind of weird how this timing kind of works for this whole thing. So welcome back. So hopefully you enjoyed the session last week with Dr. Moran. If you didn't get a chance to watch that one, remember you can go on the MISA website and look at the event videos, and you can see that session because it was really great, really informative. And I heard from a lot of students even after the session were commenting about how much they enjoyed it. So it's definitely worth your while watching that if you weren't there. But if you were there already, obviously you know what it's like, and we appreciate you being there. So tonight is, in terms of the way that we structure MISA, we have 2 different types of meetings that we have. We have a company information session like we had last week, and then we have what's called a general meeting, which is how it is tonight. So usually for the general meetings, this is where the officers sort of run the session, and then we'll go over something that's more either of a professional development or something that would be a little bit more like educational, or something that talks about different programs that we would have and whatnot. So tonight's one of those nights where we have the general meeting, where we'll actually be going through a little bit on LinkedIn and then professional networking. So because of the way the schedule was, we used to have these as 2 separate sessions. Now we combine them into one session, so that way we could have that really cool MISA Tech Talks session later on in the semester. So that's kind of the plan for tonight. So the way we're going to kind of hopefully structure this is we'll have sort of a presentation in the beginning part, and then kind of depending on how many we're at when we get sort of the end of the presentation, we'll either kind of go into these breakouts to kind of chat and do a little bit. But if we still have a lot, then we'll probably just do kind of a group chat and let you kind of pop your mic on and ask questions and comments and do it that way. So we'll see how it goes. We'll try to stay as fluid as possible. So with that, I will pass it off to our president of MISA, Mr. Jonathan Rivas, and our vice president of MISA, Mr. Raymond. So take it away, our good people.
What's going on, everybody? So like Fresh and Sweet said, we're kind of doing like a combo kind of meeting where we're doing talking about networking, and then after about your LinkedIn and handshake. So the first part of the presentation is going to be on networking, where I'll have Raymond discuss those slides.
All right, so I am going to share my screen real quick so you can take a look. So give me just one moment here. Here we go. All right. Okay. So tonight, we're going to be talking about networking. And I imagine a lot of you are maybe kind of like this when it comes down to networking. I know a lot of people don't really like the idea of it. You feel a little uncomfortable, a little intimidated, and that's completely normal. It's not easy to just go up and just start talking to people or having a conversation. So hopefully tonight we can help ease your anxiety and get a little more into it. So I kind of wanted to start off and go over what isn't networking, and that would be you meet somebody and you just start asking for a job, or you start to have like a one-way conversation where you're just talking and you're not getting any feedback. There's no real connection there. You're wondering what's in it for me. That's the tone. That definitely isn't networking. Networking is truly about creating a relationship with someone, a genuine conversation. It's not even about what you can get from someone. It's really about just connecting with someone and talking to them. And we feel like networking, that is the core of it, because I'm sure you've come across this many times, whether it's in school or even at work, but probably mostly in a school setting, where you maybe have a classmate that just asks you for different things like, can you help me with this question or this problem? And there's like no real rapport there. And you have maybe like other friends that you've just built relationships with, and you talk to them, and then if they ever need help, you're cool with helping them. There's like no issue whatsoever. And networking is a lot like that. I mean, you do professional networking, of course, to maybe see if there are any career opportunities, but that shouldn't be the goal. The goal should really just be to have a friend and just someone you could talk to. And if they happen to have something that can help you, that's always great. But you never want that to be the main thing and the main focus when you're networking with someone. So when we have these info sessions that come up, and we have people from different companies, or even if you go to career fairs, you definitely want to connect with the person before you try to figure out if there's anything in it for you. And it's very interesting because there's a lot of research done that most jobs that are filled are through networking, whether that's a friend of a friend or a friend tells you about a position that may be open in a different company they heard from another friend. A lot of times, if you ever think back to different roles you've had, you may have known somebody in some capacity. And that's the reason why networking is so important. It's just building a whole different group of people that you can talk to just about anything. And it helps, of course, professionally. So throughout this semester in MISA, as Dr. Sweet mentioned, every other week we have info sessions with different companies. And it's usually somebody from HR, it can be an IT manager, it could be the owner, a CTO. We have different people come in and they discuss their companies. They kind of give you a little insight into what different roles require and what different roles are available. And we really want you to use that opportunity when these people come in and talk about their companies to get the most out of it. So researching a company, like next week we have Citrix coming in. So it'd be a good idea to see what Citrix does as a whole. You can take a look at different job openings because maybe you can kind of ask a question geared towards that when it comes down to the Q&A portion of the info session. And you can also start to build rapport and talk to the person when it comes time to ask a question. Don't feel free or afraid to not ask something. Feel free to ask something. Even if it's something really simple like, "Oh, what skills do you think could be worthwhile?" Because anything you say will make you stand out automatically. Because we're probably not going to have 30 people jumping in. You might have just a handful, and you can be remembered there, and you can start to build a connection at that point. So please do remember to ask questions. Try to ask questions, and most importantly, connect on LinkedIn after the session, which we'll get into a little bit more of how LinkedIn works in case you don't have LinkedIn currently. We also have times, because this is a very virtual world right now due to COVID, where you talk to different recruiters virtually. So we wanted to make sure that we also touched upon that here too. A lot of recruiters, when they're looking for different people and different potential employees, they're looking for people that are going to match with them, with the company culture, and of course, the right skills. But they want to know that the person that they're talking to, which is us and you, that you are really genuine, that you're really someone that they can actually connect with and feel comfortable with bringing you to the next stage, which would be an interview. And it's always good when you go to a career fair or anywhere that you research the company. You prepare a 1-minute elevator pitch, and I'm sure you've heard this many times. It could be something very simple, just a little bit about yourself and what your likes and dislikes are. Or not likes and dislikes, but what your skills are and what your goals are. Something very simple, which we can get into a little bit later as well. And you want to make sure that your resume and your LinkedIn are up to date. We've actually had different people from info sessions tell us that how important LinkedIn is. We had one gentleman. He had mentioned that he doesn't even consider someone for a role if they don't have a LinkedIn at all, regardless of what their resume may be. We had someone else mention that she looks at different LinkedIns and checks to see if anyone endorsed you and if you endorse them back. And if you didn't endorse them back, then it's kind of like a red flag from her perspective. And this is an HR director for a company. You have people seeing if you post articles, if you comment on different articles. So there is a lot of attention professionally on LinkedIn. So you want to make sure that your LinkedIn is as up to date as possible. And also, when you talk to different recruiters, you want to make sure you have confident body language. And that could be from just talking and just making sure that you say everything clearly. It could be you're standing still or you're standing like, oh, I'm like here, I'm ready to talk. You want to be like quiet and okay, I'm doing this. You want to make sure you're very confident. And you want, even if it takes rehearsing what you're going to say 1,000 times, that's fine. You want to be as confident as possible so that way you come across in the best possible way. And you also want to build rapport and a conversation with the recruiter. It could be about anything, which we'll get into next at this. And of course, connect on LinkedIn, please. That's the theme all night. So what do you talk about in a networking scenario? So this is about starting a conversation, which is like the spark to a fire. And it's like, how do you even begin? Where do you start when you talk to someone new? And there are a lot of different ways to approach this. You could talk about the setting, like the event itself. Maybe it's a career fair and you're talking to a recruiter and you're kind of like waiting for things to start. You can say, like, how many of these have you done? How is your day going? Just anything to just start a conversation. You're trying to find a way to start something to discuss and continue the conversation with. You could talk about current hot topics, like right now, like what do you think about what's happening with GameStop? That's pretty much a hot topic. You can get into that pretty deeply with someone. You could talk about them. How long have you been doing this? What do you like most about this? Just to kind of get them to open up, because like I mentioned, Networking is just about a connection. You notice none of this is like what jobs you have available. All of this is geared towards just creating a conversation and just talking to the person so that you have a connection. You can also fish for a topic if you're not sure what to say. You can say like, how do you feel about where the industry is going? Are you familiar with MISA? We get a lot of people that are familiar with MISA, that FAU. If you notice something in the background, like on the Zoom call, like we had someone else that had a Christmas tree in the background, you can say, hey, what's that in the background? Is that a Christmas tree? Just to get something going. You definitely want to find a way to just start a conversation about a topic. When you do start the conversation and the fire is going, to continue it, you definitely want to ask questions. You want to continue just this. You don't want it to die out on you. So you can mention, you mentioned you've been in HR for several years. What do you like most about it? Like, what keeps you going? Just get them to talk about themselves. Give them different perspectives on things, because maybe everyone's kind of in agreement that GameStop versus the people backing GameStop versus maybe the bigger institutional funds. Maybe they feel like, okay, we all kind of stand behind that. But you also want to show that you can see both perspectives of that, even if you agree with one side more than the other, because a lot of employers do want to know that you're at least open-minded to just being one-sided on things. So you kind of want to make sure you kind of present that as well. And of course, you can still, again, ask about them, ask about what skills they feel are most important, what do they enjoy about their role, just all conversation. Like I said, none of this is even about jobs. It'll lead to it if you have a good, solid relationship and a foundation with someone already. And then how do you end the conversation? How do you get out of this? Like, okay, I'm done with this. You always want to follow up at the end. So you want to say, it's such a pleasure speaking with you. Do you have an email or LinkedIn so we can keep in touch? You can do a reference to your conversation. Maybe they spoke about their dog having a birthday party at some point. You kind of got them out of it. So you can say, I sincerely had such a blast speaking with you. Let's connect and keep in touch after this. I want to find out what happened with your dog's birthday party. Just something to show that you were paying attention when they were talking. So you kind of like throw a personal touch into it. And again, 1,000 times, always follow up. Try to connect on LinkedIn, because that's the most important thing you could possibly do long term. So there are a lot of ways to connect virtually, because again, we're in a COVID world. It's kind of a little tough. We do have virtual career fairs. FAU has a bunch going on. There's also some on Handshake, again, which we'll get into in a little bit later. It's also a good idea to reconnect with anybody on your network. Maybe you've connected with some people on LinkedIn from former classmates, or even other fellow employees. You can just reach out to them and just ask how their day is going and what's going on with them. Just start that conversation, because it's always better. As the saying is, it's always better to dig a well when you don't need it than when you do need it. Because when you do need to go to your network and find assistance and help, it's better to have the conversations and relationships built already, rather than going in cold and just seeming desperate. So you always want to have something to back yourself up with. And also, this is an interesting thing. I've read a lot of studies on cold connecting on LinkedIn, and I've even done it a couple of times. You'd be surprised at the results you get. This was just an example I threw out there, but you'd be surprised how many people are willing to help out if you have any questions. Like, for example, I wrote this. I came across your profile and I had to reach out to you. I'm graduating from college next semester at MIS, and your career path looks exactly like my dream path. I have to ask, are there any pieces of advice or guidance you can give to help me in this industry? I would sincerely appreciate it. You'd be surprised how many people seeing that would be like, oh, this person they took the time to look at my profile and they do care, and respond and give you some tips. And you notice none of this is about asking for a job. It's all just about building a relationship and getting information, and then you can provide them information, maybe give them an insight into what you think the industry is like. You just want to make sure you build rapport and build a connection with everyone as much as possible. So just to kind of recap about the networking portion, you're building a genuine connection. You're not expecting anything in return. You're just simply just talking to someone, and you're giving them value by having a good relationship and having them meet someone new as well. You're making a new friend. You're standing out from others because you're not just there asking for things. You're there just to talk. And people like to hire and work with other people that they like and that they feel pretty comfortable with. And that's what networking is all about. Just trying to connect with different people and just seeing new people. I mean, you'll feel easier the more that you do it, and you'll feel better about it. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to our El Presidente, Jonathan Rivas, and he is going to continue on the LinkedIn portion of things.
Appreciate the slide over. Let me see if I could share my screen on my end. Okay. There we go. Okay, what's going on, everybody? So I'm gonna talk about the second half, or we'll be talking more about LinkedIn and also Handshake, where it's one of the offerings that FEU offers that many of you might not have heard of yet, but it's definitely something that students especially should utilize. So on this slide, we're talking about certain facts. The fact is like only 3% of people who apply on a job board land a job. Um, we for our alumni panel for the first session that we had, we talked about um, applying to as many jobs as you can, and it's okay to get denied, and it should just keep you motivated and to just keep applying, because with these statistics it could kind of bring you down, but just know it's like that for everybody. um, Most of the workforce, over 87% of the workforce, utilize LinkedIn as a hiring website. So I know for a lot of you, we've kind of been like drilling LinkedIn in your skulls for the past 3 or 4 weeks, but it's such an importance for you to have as a business professional that that's why we're emphasizing it so much. And you can see like just by networking, that's where the majority of the jobs come from. So on the next slide. So this is what a standard LinkedIn page would look like. It's a little different to make it fit on the slides, but the main portion is you have a profile picture, a background photo, headline, summary, your experience, education, license, skills, and interests. So you hear from a lot of professors that you need a super professional photo or background, but it's all about the aesthetics that you want to offer and the kind of environment or work you want to join. So this is our former president, Christian Chavez's photo. If you know Christian, you know his personality and the career he wants to go to. So you might say, hey, that dude's wearing a hoodie in the background, but knowing Christian and knowing the path he's taking, that's perfect for realizing like the person he is. And what LinkedIn you want to do is be more personal and let people kind of know your vibe. Just looking at the photo, we know that's like just Christian right there. So, but um, you definitely need to have like a good about section where you could kind of have allow people to feel your vibe. So if you read that, you'll be like, oh, okay, that's the workforce you want to go to. Definitely putting your experience is really important, because when you're applying for jobs, they're always asking for this amount of experience or that amount of experience. Like, don't be afraid to put any experience you had. Like on my LinkedIn, I had working Target's like back room for 2 years, and some people might be like, "Hey, that's nothing to do with IT." But work ethic is like a huge thing for people that are employing you, and seeing like, hey, you're doing a job like that for that amount of years, being in that position, you got to work kind of hard for that. That's something really important. Even volunteering stuff, that's a huge thing to put on there too. As a IT professional, having licenses and certificates are extremely important. If you're in the pregame, I think you probably heard us talking about Excel a lot, about Excel certificates. Um, don't be afraid of like saying you have experience and stuff. In LinkedIn, you have people saying could verify that you're proficient at whatever experience you put in. So having licenses and certificates and having people endorsing your skills are pretty important as well. So even if you're somewhat okay in Excel, say, hey, Excel is one of my skills, because you Excel and Google Office 365 and any like Google environment is pretty important in this modern age of virtual um, workforce. So let me go on the next slide. So you always want to have a great first impression. So having a profile photo and a background that conveys your message, like I said earlier, is really important. We see our MVP Emily on the bottom left there. You could feel you could see like the awesome background she has. So you already know she's in the IT field by just looking at the background without even reading anything. Then looking at her message saying aspiring analyst, graduate student at FAU, you know what field she wants to be in. We saw Shannon for a couple meetings throughout this semester, so um, having a quote that means a lot to you is great. And for Laszlo Bach, looking at his workforce, you could what the message he's trying to convey is, hey, we have a great work environment, um, or where I'm working is a great work environment. So it's just a message you want to convey, and don't be afraid to put anything that you think could um, show off your personality, as long as it's obviously somewhat professional. Okay, so the about section, there's a lot of different ways you could go about it. You could talk them all about like your kind of personal skills, or it could be more about your past experience. So for this user, he says, I'm a kinesthetic learner who loves to dive into new projects and new opportunities with optimal amount of fear. Then he talks about his studies. So he's getting more personal and stuff he is urging for, or he wants to thrive for in a possible job opportunity. Or you could be a little bit more like business professional and have like a more of a linear kind of timeline where you could talk about this year, that year, that year. So either way it works for you. Um, it's just always have somebody like um read it over before you put your about section, because um, sometimes it might sound really good in your head, like amazing, but then when you post it, somebody might be pop out and be like, hey, um, it's a little sketchy right there. So definitely try to be more personal on it, but try not to make it super crazy. Just get out your core points that you want to get out. So obviously having a like a resume is probably one of the most important things a person can have when applying for a job. So definitely the College of Business has a well, I can never say Byron's name, liaison for the Career Center. So definitely, if you don't even have a resume, FAU has a lot of resources and people there to actually help you build your resume. So we'll definitely recommend you reaching out to the Career Center if you need help building a resume. But having a resume is obviously a must, and definitely putting it on LinkedIn is where employers will watch it. So you could add me personally on my LinkedIn. I also put my elevator pitch on it. So that's another video that you could put on to have a great first impression for people that are trying to employ you. For a lot of students in the business core, they have to take a GEB class, and at least for my GEB class, like having a professional LinkedIn page was a huge grade. So if you haven't taken GEP yet, you might want to start working on your LinkedIn page, because it is going to be probably a requirement for your class, and which is great because you obviously need a LinkedIn. And then so what is this? Yep. So definitely, like I said earlier, putting any experience you've had, no matter if it was a minor job, for example, just being a cashier at Walgreens or having a higher end job, definitely put that in your LinkedIn, because employers are looking for different aspects of an employee, whether it's um, technical skills, or seeing if you're a hard worker, or seeing just the growth through experience, looking at where you may have started in the beginning, like this person starting at Walgreens going all the way up to a consultant or a coordinator. That's showing that you're working hard and trying to grow. Uh, and like I said earlier, putting skills is important. Don't be afraid to put skills. If you are decent at Word, put Word as a skill. If you're decent at Excel, put Excel as a skill. Um, if you're anything you could think of, put it as a skill. It's nothing to be like, hey, I'm not too like mastered of it, but that's where endorsement comes in. So put as much skills as you can, and don't like if you think it's not a skill that you think people might like, just think again. So let me go there. Like I said, just having what's it called? Oop, messed up the slide. Okay, here we go. So yeah, having certificates is also important, like I emphasized earlier. Definitely as an IT professional, having certificates is usually a requirement by a lot of employers. So um, definitely look into that. And then here's the handshake portion. There's our lovely President Raymond. You can see his profile is 100% complete, so you know he's definitely on his handshake game. So if you don't know what LinkedIn is, definitely something's wrong. But I'm assuming some of you may not have heard about Handshake. It's pretty similar to LinkedIn, but it's made for college students. It's where college students could connect and find internships and job offerings through FAU. So I think we have Byron coming in a couple weeks, so he'd probably go over that a little bit more. But just like LinkedIn, you will have like a about section or a my journey section where you talk about yourself, talk about your education. So just like LinkedIn, you put in your experience, you put in your education, any extracurricular stuff. So if you join MISA, obviously that's a little bit of a perk where employers would be like, hey, that guy's in MISA, so at least that's a good look, you know what I'm saying? So let me go on the next slide. And for LinkedIn and Handshake, messaging, like Raymond said, is really important because that is your path to networking. Communicating between possible employers or just, like he said, just getting connections between people will open up like a plethora of opportunities for you in the future. So try to be as responsive as you can be as well. Don't like see a message and ignore it for like 5 days and then be like, oh, now I'm interested. I'm not saying to reply back in 30 seconds, but even if you're not necessarily interested in a certain job they may be talking about, at least have a cordial conversation being like, right now, I'm not trying to join a certain position there, but just gaining that connection and being connected with that person could only help you. We put in a couple actual current positions that you can actually find on Handshake once you apply. You can see there's a summer college intern for IT management at Next Era. Next Era is like a basically FBL. So application deadline it passed already, but for some reason I guess it's still open. So I guess they didn't fill it in yet. But like I said, Shannon was in our meeting earlier. He works for Modernizing Medicine. We've had quite a few MISA members work for Modernizing Medicine. I believe TJ's with Modernizing Medicine right now. So I know I spoke about vibes a lot, but definitely we've only heard about great work environment at Modernizing Medicine. So definitely just looking at these different jobs and these opportunities, just keep applying. Like it won't hurt you getting denied. Like you're gonna have to keep applying and applying to even get an opportunity or even like a meeting. So Handshake is a great tool for FAU students to find internships and jobs, and we definitely recommend it. And then Handshake also offers a multitude of virtual events. We put a few events that are coming up. Tomorrow, Amazon's holding a Future Builders Fridays. So it's about how to build your personal brand. We have Google coming about, talking to first generation students next week, Tuesday. So just going through these events pages and seeing stuff that might interest you or educate yourself better is definitely something we would recommend you joining. Ring Central is coming next week as well. I personally work a lot with Ring Central. They're like the leading VoIP provider, I'm pretty sure, in the entire country. So just having these connections and meeting with these certain companies would only improve your standings in front of like a huge workforce that you're battling against. Okay, so we've got to the point of the questions, Raymond. So
So we wanted to
guess
stay in the main. I think there's a lot of us, so
yeah.
it may get out of control to start breaking out in rooms and
In
everything.
May,
So
so
if you want to, I'll stop the recording so that way people feel comfortable to share, so
yeah.
you don't have to feel that you're going to be on there on the video. So I'll go ahead and stop that now.